Go ahead.
Okay, everybody, welcome back to Astrospeak, the second Astrospeak so far this year. We are an astrology chat show featuring astrologers just kicking the planets around. The goal of the show is to avoid pontification, which all of us are quite capable of doing, and go for quick, pithy answers, ask some questions, respond, try to keep it to a couple of minutes, get right to the point. And some of the questions you can ramble on a little bit, but we'll yell at you if you go too long, so you don't have to worry about that. So, and we're on for about 90 minutes. And I am Anthony S. Picco. I am your New York City astrologer, and our other host is Michaela Villiers-Kendall from England. Hello, Michaela. Here she is. And what the hell? I'm going to start with a really basic question that I'm pretty sure everybody's going to have the same feeling about, but how do you feel about the word astrologist?
Oh,
Oh, I think it only exists because like Facebook listed it as a description, but what is all of your takes on astrologist?
What do you think, Anthony, first? What do you think?
Oh, me? It's like, I don't go to a plumbist and I don't go to a countist. So I figure,
Dentist.
Yeah, dentist, okay, therapist, but we've been using astrologer for so long. It's like, who came up was astrologist an attempt to make it legitimate? Like, oh, well, I'm not an astrologer, I'm an astrologist. Come on. Sarah, you've got your hand up. I guess if you want to say something, go right ahead.
Yeah, okay. So I like to stir the pot. So I wouldn't call myself an astrologist, but I have looked into the etymology of the suffix ist, and it is valid. Technically, it is someone who does something. So like a cyclist even, right? And like you said, dentist, therapist. So it's technically grammatically correct, but I don't think it's colloquially correct, like in common usage. So I wouldn't use it, but just saying.
It doesn't sound so good, does it? It doesn't have that ring that astrology has, that
No.
Of ancient wisdom, we hope.
Yeah, my ancient wisdom. Yeah, right. Ryan, you got something to say? Go ahead, unmute yourself. Can somebody unmute?
Yes. Just like the previous question I did answer, I did check out Wikipedia there, and what I basically got from that is the gist, pun intended, of it was that an astrologist is someone who plays with it. Someone who's like interested in it and maybe tries a few things out and maybe looks at their lunar phases for their own personal gain. Once we start charging money for it, then we're an astrologer. That's my understanding. And so therefore, I prefer the term astrologer.
That's a nice division.
Certified.
Okay. I'm not sure who put their hand up first, but Daniel, would you start with what you have to say? Oh, got to unmute yourself. Okay, you're unmuted.
So when I hear that, I generally just assume it's somebody who doesn't know a lot about astrology. At least they're showing some interest in it, and it's better than some of the other things I've been called. So.
Okay, Michael Pinchera, have you anything to add to that?
Yeah, just a little bit. Astrologist, that whole thing, it's just someone who, it's like somebody, everything that's been said so far is really right on. And an astrologist is this is something that they believe in, okay? And an astrologer is someone who is practicing, I would say, and doing it. That's just my take on it.
So like astrologist could be like you're Catholic, but astrologer is like you're the priest.
Something like that.
Okay, it's just coming for an analogy. I don't mean to smear anybody. One last one on this. Carolyn, Sharon, you have something to say about astrologist?
Yes. I don't like the sound of it. It doesn't taste good. But Yasmin Boland is an astrologerist out of the UK. and has been around for years and years and years. I've attended some of her lectures and stuff. She knows a thing or two, but she seems to be an astrologer, as a lot of people would think, and certainly the 10,000 people that follow her think she's got something going. And I think I might not even be exaggerating when I say 10,000 followers.
God bless her. Well, Michaela, you can handle the next question if you like. Go ahead.
Okay. Well, I'll start with a simple one as well. How did you feel when you read your sun sign description for the first time? And what course of action did you pursue after the initial experience?
Do you want to kick it off?
Me? Oh, yeah,
Yeah,
sure.
why not? What the hell? Get the ball
Well,
rolling.
I'm a Libran, so yeah, I was pretty happy to be a Libran, I think. Yeah, actually, it did make a big impression on me that did seem to suit how I felt. Yeah, so and it did encourage me. Yeah, I stayed with sun signs as most of us did when we read about them for a long time before I moved on to something more, but it did form a basis. Yeah. So how about you, Anthony?
Well, very quickly, I was horrified. I was like 8 or 9, and I'm like, who is this Capricorn crap? I got it in one of those little rolls for, I don't know if you remember those old machines, you got a tiny roll, and there was your, and it wasn't until I had my chart reading done 30 years later or 20 years later that I finally understood what it meant. And I'm like, okay, I'm cool with it. But I was a crazy little kid being beaten and punished all the time. It's like, how the hell was I a Capricorn? Eric, I'll start with Eric and we'll work our way through the hands up.
Sure. So growing up with my mom and my grandmother, reading our horoscopes every morning was just something my grandmother did when she had her coffee. So I remember at a very, very early age, maybe even first, second grade, so I must have been like 6, 7 years old, continuously hearing every morning, okay, you're an Aries, and I would ask what that was, and it was the ram, and it's a fire sign, and I was very upset. I always loved water and the ocean, and I'm like, I just want to be an Aquarius because it sounds like aqua and water, which obviously now is an air sign. It's not a water sign. The things that we believe when we're very small children. And I don't think I came to terms with it until high school, when I started really kind of exploring different esoteric and occult ideas, and really got a better understanding of what astrology is as a whole. Interestingly enough, my Jupiter is in Pisces, so that's probably where my love of the water comes from, and my upset at the fiery, seemingly boring ram, as I originally thought.
But boring?
It's not boring when you're getting rammed, but okay.
Oh.
And I don't mean that in a terribly offensive way, but
I just thought goats were boring, and a ram was like a sheep goat thing, and I was like, that's just fun or exciting.
I was going to say, it seems like you must have Pisces with a love of water like that. Yeah.
Jupiter and Pisces.
Yeah.
So Stacy, what you got to say about when you first stumbled across your sun sign?
Well, I'm a Scorpio. And so, of course, I'm coming across descriptions that are saying, jealous, vindictive, manipulative, evil, possessive, all of these like problematic, states of mind. And it seems like no one really got it right in the newspapers, because that's what I read when I was young, just the newspaper. They just stuck to this sort of legend of Scorpio as some kind of mysterious and dark force. And, in my experience, it couldn't be farther from the truth. I actively practice, rather than being vindictive, I take a lesson and internalize it in myself and learn from it. And, I take responsibility for my experiences, which is the opposite of what Scorpios, all the popular Scorpio panel or whatever you call it would say. And so I guess I never really bought into the bubblegum shit, or sorry.
Scorpio. Gotcha.
Right. And then I found, evolutionary astrology, and that everything made sense. And so that was the end of that.
Just a quick side comment. I don't know what age all of you are, but I know for me, I first ran across Capricorn in the 1960s. And really, that was like the dark ages of modern astrology. It wasn't really until the 70s when things really started evolving. So that some of us stumbled across it in the dark ages, so to speak. Daniel, you're next, and then Penelope will get to you. Don't worry.
Okay, well, I have 3 planets in Leo, and I think anybody who really knows me probably knows that already. I don't have to tell them. But like when I found out I was a Leo, like everything else astrological for me, it struck an inner chord. I mean, there was just a resonance that happened, and it made sense. And I think we've all probably had that same experience. There was just a facilitating, thing that came through. And we said, I got to follow this. You get a hit. That was really, really how I came to it.
And Penelope. Nope, you're muted. You're muted. Got to unmute yourself.
Where is she?
Unmute yourself, Penelope. Oh, that's strange. Who is there? Anybody in charge of unmuting? Oh, there we go.
There you go. But what I've for me was quite interesting. I had from up until 2015, I always believed I was a Taurus. I'm born on the cusp. I'm a cusp baby. So I was born on the 21st of May, and I had 2 family members who were Geminis that I didn't particularly like very much. So I took the Taurus bit. And then when I hit 6 years ago, I think I was 49 coming up, or 48. And I ended up having a proper reading with somebody on YouTube, and with the birth time, I'm 0 degrees 17 of Gemini. So, and a Gemini moon. So for me, it makes a lot of sense now. But I wanted to be a Taurus, and now I'm a Gemini. But I've got a Taurus North Node, so I'm happy.
You just squeaked in there. That's all. Okay. Go ahead, Michaela. You're going to say something or no?
No, I was just saying. I think Penelope, you have Mars in Taurus, don't you?
Mars, Mercury.
Yeah, that's right. So
North Node.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I have a Taurus moon at 29 degrees, like 48 minutes, and I've never felt the least bit Gemini moon. It's funny. I don't believe in blending, but boy, it sure can make a difference a few minutes. Okay, next question. Why did you choose to use tropical or sidereal, if you have chosen? Me personally, I use tropical. I respect sidereal. I always think the magic is in the astrologer, not the system. But tropical, I relate the signs to the seasons. Aries to me is the beginning of spring. Capricorn is the beginning of summer, winter, and they make perfect sense metaphorically. So I understand that 5,000 years ago, we decided there's a constellation. It's not going to move, right? Well, we didn't know that 5,000 years ago. I know in New York before 9/11, you come out of the subway, the first thing you look for was the World Trade Center to orient yourself, but it's gone now. But that doesn't mean New York City's changed. So even though the constellations have moved, I still associate the signs with the seasons and where they're placed now. That's my take. So Sarah, you wanna be next, and we'll. Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean Michaela. If you had something to say, go right ahead.
No, that's fine. Yeah, no, go ahead.
Okay, Sarah, give it a shot.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, I use tropical because I feel like it has more to do what's happening down here in like the physical realm, like the Saturnian realm. It's based on the seasons, which is a human construct, Saturnian construct, you could argue. So it makes a lot of sense. Though I do have a lot of respect for sidereal, because I feel like if you look at it from the context that I just described for tropical, it almost shows another side of us. So it's interesting when you blend the two, but in practice, 90% of the time I'm using tropical because it's a lot more practical.
Okay, Eric, you want to start next? Go next.
Sure. So I've played with both, as I think a lot of astrologers probably have, as well as house systems. I played with them. I settled on tropical for a number of different reasons, but my belief again is similar to what's been explained with the seasons. But my thought is if astrology was developed when it was developed, and we're looking at this portion of the sky, let's say Aries, which isn't necessarily there anymore. But I think that our understanding of what comes out of that area of space is this cardinal fire type vibration. And no matter where the stars are, when we discovered it, it was to express to us that this part of the sky, this is what is experienced here. And that's my personal belief.
Okay, Ryan, you want to give it a shot?
Sure. This is the entirety of the book I'm currently writing. So I have a deep, deep passion for my belief and my experience that, to reiterate what everyone else has said here, is that astrology is based on the seasons. Let's take that one step deeper. Why is Aries about cardinal fire, and why is Taurus about fixed earth? And so we can say it's about the seasons, right? But we have to understand our ancient anthropological engagement with each season as it comes. In Capricorn season, it is dark and it is cold. And if you don't have your jerky smoked and your beets canned, which hopefully you did back in Virgo seasons, then you are totally and completely dead, because that's the reality of Capricorn. And so astrology is not some esoteric projection of psychological meaning onto made up pictures in the sky. Astrology has its core roots in our historical primal needs based on the requirements of every season. Sagittarius, the last sign. Sagittarius comes along and woohoo, we're going into darkness. Who knows what's going to happen? The sun is about to die. Let's have faith. Let's try to stay optimistic. Let's try to find the meaning and purpose of life. Ancient in our genetics. So there, again, I could pontificate. This is my entire book, but next.
You gotta leave us room to want to buy the book, Ryan,
I do. I'm there. A great description.
No, it was great. I could let him go on, but then we would be pontificating. Michael, your thoughts on sidereal and tropical?
Yeah, well, I would say that actually that not so much that these signs or whether it's sidereal or tropical, or whatever, is not a projection of the human psyche upon that. But what I would say, there's actually a spiritual reality that's there. And, the fact that when this was first, really written down, a little over 2,000 years ago, that's when the vernal equinox was in Aries. And some astrologers just, stayed with that. And then, of course, you have the seasons. And I would say that the constellations, the reality, the archetypes that are living in the constellations are reflected, just differently in the tropical view, and then reflected even further in the houses. Which, by the way, I don't have a book coming out, but May 6th I'll be doing a EA Zoom meeting on this topic.
Oh, great.
Okay. One of the things too for me when we go from tropical to sidereal is that for me, Moon square Pluto has a very strong statement before you even get into what sign it is. I often approach my charts via aspects first. And so that's, I think, one of the reasons there is truth to both systems, in the way you interpret it. But I don't want to pontificate. So Michaela, what's the next question?
Okay, so a philosophical question now. Well, current philosophy of life. Yeah, I don't have the whole note here, but what is your current philosophy of life and spirituality? That combines, isn't it? Or have I taken your question there?
Well, no, we could do it together.
Okay.
The way I put it was, how do your spiritual beliefs relate to your astrological practice, or do they? So me personally, I'm very much a Seth, you create your own reality kind of person. And that is how I present my astrology readings. It's always, what can you create out of this? It's not, what are you sentenced to? I don't believe in fate. So, and I'm a very strong believer that we create reality all the time, and that there are no accidents. So it's very much a part of my life. And I actually got into the Seth material before I got into astrology, even though he kind of dismisses astrology a little bit, because he says, if you really want to do an accurate chart, you should consider every object in the universe the moment you're born. And I kind of agree with that, but I only have so much time. And I figure we live in this solar system, we can focus on that. But that's my take about spirituality and astro and my other stuff. Anybody else? Michaela, do you want to, you ask the question?
Yeah, well, I mean, I think of myself now as a neo-Gnostic. I think that's what I like to coin the phrase, because, well, I've gotten more into that area. I guess EA got me into that because it does have similarities with Hermeticism and Gnosticism and alchemy, and I think that's all brought into it. The Kabbalah is really based on Gnosticism, and so everything combined, I think that's sort of, that encompasses so much that we're going towards now with astrology and everything else. And so I would say, yeah, as above, so below. Yeah.
And we have a lot of people wanting to respond. So Michael Bartlett, let her rip. Tell us what you think about your spirituality and astrology.
Well, even though my moon's diametrically opposed to yours at 29 degrees Scorpio in the 12th house conjunct my moon, my life has always been about spirituality. And what I really appreciate about the blending or the mixing of astrology is having that right brain aspect working with the left brain, using the astronomy aspect, with the placements of the planets, whether you're using sidereal or whether you're using tropical systems, and then incorporating that with our own intuitional, spiritual, emotional, psychic understanding. I mean, for me, it's a circle, right? So the more experience that we have along all of the spectrums, the more, sometimes people look at a splayed chart and think, oh my God, here's a person who's a jack of all trades, but a master of nothing. But maybe check in with that person at the end of their life and see what is it they've attained, because some of us are here to really gather information in very different ways. And what I love about astrology is it helps guide us and helps kind of give us a little bit of a shortcut to understanding these things. And personally, since I have a little bit more of an esoteric understanding, what I really appreciate is the way it blends and adds a different kind of a harmonic to looking at traditional astrology and seeing kind of the ways in which the soul and the personality might be at odds with one another, because really that's kind of like what we're always dealing with here on the planet, is the issues of physicality and spirituality, and how do we rectify and balance them rather than vilify and denigrate either one of them.
Yeah.
And Daniel, we got you up there. You got some words to say?
Sure. Anthony, I think that my beliefs are probably parallel to yours. I was a Seth reader, way back, and it really, left a template in me in terms of how I view reality. But I've come to understand that, we do create it, but I believe we dream it. I think that this is all what Jamie Sams called a dream weave. That really encompasses it. It really is a world of thought, more than a world of action, if you would. And I think everything unfolds exactly as it's supposed to. And I think that that's the hardest lesson for any of us to understand, because especially as evolutionary astrologers working with Pluto, are dealing with clients who are coming to us with things that are overwhelming them, or life experiences that we might look at that, we bless our lucky stars that didn't happen to us, but yet it drives us forward. I believe that the long-term path, which probably is the Ouroboros, it's the dragon swallowing its tail that has no beginning and no end, is that we're all here to understand that which is greater than ourselves, which is not only outside of us, but which is within us.
Yeah, I would like to add one. We have other people to say something too, but I just want to add something. I always believe whatever happens is supposed to happen, but right before it happens, anything can happen. But then once it happens, live with it. That's what was supposed to happen. But that's me. Stacy, you're next up on this question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I was going to say, for me, my spiritual practice and astrology are one and the same. And that is, I started out in life raised as a Mormon, and completely caught up into the social pressures of that religion, completely messed with my identity. But over the years, I just, I would find myself isolating and just spending a lot of time with myself and really getting clear on, what I'm about. And when I found astrology, it literally, once I understood the symbols and how they interact, I realized, wow, this is the whole answer right here. I'm not interested in a God in the sky. I'm not interested in community approval. It's you find God where you find it. And for me, within the astrological symbols, to see the blueprint of your chart, it's showing you what God intended you to be, all of the things that you are meant to experience and work on. And for me, that couldn't be any more spiritual. It's very objective, and it really gets you to where the rubber meets the road instead of fancy sayings. So yeah,
Sure.
that's my input.
Yeah.
Okay. Two more. We have Amanda and then Michael. Amanda, you want to let loose on your spirituality here?
Oh yeah. And very similar to what Stacy was saying, my astrological practice and my spirituality are so just tied together. And I think that, I was kind of like raised Catholic for a minute, and then that all stopped. And my mom just took me like on a walk in a canyon one day and essentially said, like, it's your job to learn about belief systems, and it's your job to learn about yourself, and, be nice to people in the process and figure out what you believe. And at this point, my spirituality is so much centered around, the primacy of love in all things, and the inherent capacity of the psyche and humans to heal, and just how interconnected things are. And so when I found evolutionary astrology in particular, part of why I thought it was like one of my soulmates was the rich spirituality that is very clear, thinking about things like natural law and using astrology to see how things are interconnected. But I also felt like there was room there for me to kind of like inject the weirdness of my own experience and, make my own meaning out of it. And so now that I combine EA with deep memory process or past life regression therapy, being able to see, like, have that experience of witnessing a person's ability to heal when there is space held for that, always helps me to keep compassion at the root of all things, and helps me to keep love at the root of all things. And it's really incredible.
Yeah, it's so good for validation and to be objective. It gives you that objectiveness like nothing else does. It's wonderful.
And Michael, I believe you're the last one who wishes to weigh in on the ineffable spirituality. Where we lose Michael Panchera.
I had put my hand down, but here I am.
I'm sorry. Okay,
it's okay. I'll say a little bit unless you want to change the subject.
Okay, that's it. Okay. we can move
Well,
to.
no, that's not it. Well, what I'll say is that I see, as far as my spirituality and my practice of astrology, they do go hand in hand, and that it's all about how we are all evolving as spiritual beings, and that we are love is actually our true path for all of us. We're to create a planet of love. In the future, this is what we'll become, and we just need to do what we can do. Meanwhile, we have all of our karma that keeps on being formed at every moment and having to deal with that. So through that we are becoming more and more conscious, hopefully. And anyway, it's the path I am, how to be a conscious human being.
And some of us are evolving faster than others, but I'm not going to name names. Daniel, you want to add something before we move to the next?
One last comment. The Hopis don't have a word in their language for religion or spirituality because it is so embedded with their lifestyle that it's not, there's no separateness to it.
Oh, wow. Huh.
Okay, that's a good lesson worth considering. Okay, the next question, and it's sort of this, as long as we're combining stuff with astrology, should counseling astrologers be required to hold a clinical license? And the other part of that question, at what point do you refer clients to a mental health professional? I'm just going to quickly say that, of course, I think due to the current fringe nature of astrology, I hate using that term, but you know what I mean. We do attract some people that are reluctant to seek traditional therapy. I have a particular client right now. I'm trying to get her to stop calling me and go to a therapist, but she has Saturn exactly on her ascendant, so I have no idea where that's going to go. But I do try very much. It's like, I'll give you suggestions, but I'll always say, gee, you might want to check out a 12-step program. Gee, you might be good to go into therapy. This is a good time. I try very much to just remind them, look, I'm an astrologer and I know patterns and stuff, but it doesn't mean I'm a therapist. So I do try to discourage them from calling me every 3 months asking me what to do next. Okay. Michaela, do you have any opinion before we get to all the hands up?
Yeah, I agree with that. I'd say, yeah, I mean, to hold a clinical license, I'd say the way the world still addresses astrology, that's a long way off, really. But I would say it comes still under the umbrella of alternative therapies, like you were saying. And so it would be maybe a good idea if alternative therapies were rounded up, like hypnotherapy and, all of them, Reiki and so many, and really actually very good therapies that are really still on the fringe and not considered scientific or legitimate, really. So it would be good if there was a legitimacy to these alternative therapies that were under the same umbrella, that would be, you would be able to hold a license in that respect. Might be a good idea.
Yeah, I mean, we do have accreditation, NCGR and AFA accrediting, but that has no legal standing whatsoever.
Yeah, one big umbrella under the law might be good.
Yeah, and scientists sneer at that stuff. I've butted my heads with enough skeptics. Daniel, you next on this list of therapy and astrologers.
I think that's a really excellent question. Because I think that we have all found ourselves in the middle of a reading, wishing that maybe I am not clinically trained. I know many astrologers are therapists and also astrologers, and I think that's a really good combination. But I think we've all found ourselves in a situation where we wish we had more skills with someone who is really in crisis when they come to us. What I have done is I have a client who is a therapist, and I collaborate with her. I prepare charts for her client who she's going to meet with, and I refer clients that need a therapist to her. So we have this collaborative agreement set up, and that's the way that I've dealt with it and work with it.
That's pretty good. That's a good idea. And I've done readings for therapists, but that's a whole nother ballgame. And I had a therapist once, and I turned to him and I said, we're in the same business. I told him I was an astrologer, and I think he almost threw up. That was a long time ago. Eric, you want to have, you got something to say about therapy and astrologers? Go ahead.
I do, because this was the question that I had posed. Yeah, I have very strong feelings about this, but I'm really excited to hear what you said, Daniel, about collaborating with a licensed clinician. I have a degree in psychology. I am not a licensed clinician. I've worked in a lot of mental health areas, so I know a lot about trauma-informed care, how to approach individuals. I'm mental health CPR first, mental health MH first aid trained, which is like first aid for mental health crises. But I do think that it is a very important to make that distinction with individuals, because therapy and what we do as astrologers can be, if we're not careful, triggering and traumatizing. And I think that it's important for us to be at least semi-aware of how to deal with those situations. I think that we do fall into this realm of spiritual counseling, much like a priest or a preacher or somebody else would. I mean, they do counseling, and ours, to piggyback off of the spirituality question, is, I think, somewhat similar. I also pair with a friend of mine, Daniel, who is not only a therapist, but also an astrologer. So I will very quickly and very easily be like, this is outside of my realm of expertise. I think what we've uncovered here is something that you need to address somewhere else on a different platform. But I promise I will get to my point here very quickly. I think that we're in a gray area right now, and I think it's exciting, but potentially dangerous, and we need to be careful how we approach individuals, where I think is what we're saying, and that we wouldn't bill ourselves, but advertising ourselves anything more than what we are actually capable of. So, and I'll actually be giving a talk in a couple weeks here on panic disorders and astrology, which is a side project I'm working on here for the EA Zooms, and I hope you can check that out. But mental health and astrology is something that's very close to my heart, so I'll stop now.
Yeah, and I do know there are a few astrologers who are also licensed. John Marshall, I'm never sure how to pronounce his name, in New York is one of them, and I know a few others, so maybe they'll have a completely different take on it. But who's left here? We have Stacy and Sarah both have things they wish to say. Whoever wants to go first. Stacy, are you here?
Okay, sure.
Okay.
Oh, okay. Remind me the question.
So, when do you draw the line? When do you send somebody to a professional
Okay.
therapist? What do you think we should have counseling degrees? Go ahead.
Okay, so first of all, is in terms of certification, I mean, you can get certified in certain branches of astrology where there is an authority that is able to review your work and say this is competent or it's not, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if we're talking about like a state issued, like a governmental certified credential, it doesn't make sense, because it's not like we have astrologers working for the state, right? We don't have an authority to really certify people. So I don't see that being realistic in the foreseeable future. But one thing I will say is that certifications can be, some people go after certifications, and then they feel that as soon as they do the work to earn their certification, then the title just automatically makes them some kind of authority. I think in astrology, we need to really be more responsible than that, and not just rest on certifications, because a lot of times people who come to astrologers are those who have been shut out from the system, where the traditional therapists aren't hearing them. they're just not understanding. And sometimes you need an astrologer who is more in tune with the depths of the soul and the dynamics of the psyche, someone who can hear things differently. Now, if someone is obviously, you know, talking about hurting themselves or other people, then yes, you have a responsibility to step in. And honestly, I mean, why not? You know, you could even tell someone, if someone needs to talk a lot, you could say, hey, why not go to this community service and get some counseling? And then, you know, we can do astrology sessions as well, you know, just integrate a bunch of things. So, but if someone was like really off their rocker and just, you know, being self-destructive, then yeah, you would want to refer them to professional services.
So Ryan, let it rip.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity here. Real simple. What I do is at the beginning of each reading, offer a disclaimer. And in my disclaimer, I say, hey, yo, I am a symbol reader. I am an archetypologist. I am an artist who tries to paint meaning through the symbols that are ascribed to your birth tattoo. And so all I can do here, I tell people, is give you my opinion as to what I believe those symbols mean and how they may or may not relate to you. I go on to say, I am not a therapist, I'm not a psychotherapist, I'm not a psychiatrist. I adhere to all codes and ethics that they would. But when it comes right down to it, you have a quote problem we can't solve here. And let's face it, just about, we do this astrology stuff because just about everything can be found and answered in the symbols. But if there are, complexes that are much too entangled to unravel in an hour or two, then definitely by all means go see a therapist. So 2 cents.
Yeah, I think there are troubles too, because sometimes you come across somebody who's just at the beginning of working on PTSD from their childhood, and you can't zip them to like, well, 7 years from now, you'll be feeling really well after you've done all this work. Eric, you wanted to add something to this?
Yes.
Wrap up. Go ahead.
Just not to, I don't want to stir the pot, but I've heard some words used by some people that are concerning, at least from my perspective. Certainly there are therapeutic modalities that we utilize as astrologers, but the point was not should we how we certify and how we have clinical licenses, which I think is somewhat important for the type of astrology you do. I do not do counseling astrology. I do straight predictive astrology. That's what I do. But I've lost my point and I apologize. So
well, about words, the proper use of certain words and certain terms.
Right. So, while we may be able to uncover things in astrology, I think without proper training, even outside of certification, but I think that we need to have, that astrologers really need to be well-versed on TROC, which is trauma-informed care, because words can be triggering and it is very, very, very easy to hurt someone unknowingly. I'm not going to repeat the words that I heard because I don't want to call people out, but I do think that we need to be very, very careful and really consider the type of astrology that we're offering. And if we want to do that, I think we can without a clinical license, but I think we need to be properly trained to do so.
Yeah.
Okay. If we're done with that one, Michaela, do you have something next?
Okay. Well, this one. Okay. The question is, in light of the recent grand configuration in Aquarius, the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, the Aquarian ruler being a Uranus or in Taurus, as well as Saturn, also conjunct the Jupiter. Sorry, Saturn was the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction was. Oh yeah, the north node of Venus. Yeah, the north node was conjunct Venus at the time of the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction. So should we not explore more innovative ways of valuing astrology and operating it as a business according to natural law, which is an EA expression? That's the question. Want to go first?
Okay. Anybody else want to take that one? That's a big mouthful for me. I'll have to think about it.
Anyone
No
want to
one-
go? No? I'll say, I mean, obviously it's about values, isn't it? Uranus in Taurus, North Node of Venus, North Node conjunct Venus. So it's about our values, and we do need to, everything is pointing to the fact that the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction as a marker for the age of Aquarius, you know, where we need to go to a higher mental, to a high consciousness, if that's where we're going, we hope to go, we do need to examine our values. So it's not just about money, but obviously money comes very much into it. How we value money, how we consume. I mean, that's what's coming up at the moment. Our material values are seeing what we're doing with our consumerism and what it's doing to the world and the exploitation. And now we find, you know, there's big business corporations doing strange things behind the scenes. You know, it's all Uranus in Taurus, and it's all very shocking what we're finding out every day, that actually we find the world is like a big, you know, human beings are like a big parasite on the world. So our values are trying to desperately cope with all of that. So it's not just about our business, but then as I suppose the question is about astrologers and, you know, astrology as a business. How do we fit into all of that? It's a difficult question always.
Well, you know, I'm actually going to ask another question that sort of ties into it. The question we're going to bring up a little bit later was, where are we in terms of our beliefs in the age of Aquarius and when we think it started? And I do believe, I understand kind of in a Neptunian way what you're talking about, Michaela. I think we are at a period of shifting. I mean, if we are coming, regardless of when the age of Aquarius started, we're coming out of an age of Pisces and we're moving into an age of Aquarius. And the difference is that the Pisces was sort of emerged consciousness, whereas now we have the flip side of Leo, the individual in service to society. And I think we're finding the potential for a restructuring of society, meaning that maybe the pyramid structure doesn't work anymore, because we have individuals that have no training coming out with new ideas. There's some kid recently who invented some robot that cleans a plastic out of the ocean, some high school. So I think we're seeing a lot more, or that young girl Greta from the Scandinavian areas, like insisting we change things. So I think that's part of what's happening with the Aquarian age on some certain level. And this is my fantasy or awareness of it. I think we're moving from pyramid to tribal, although it's a high-tech tribal because we've got Facebook. Here we are an astrologist group. I'm sure you all belong to other groups that you never would have met before the Aquarian computer internet came up. So I think we are reorganizing our structures of society slowly, unfortunately, in new ways. So I understand what the question is kind of about, is how are things shifting from the traditional? But yeah, it's hard to put in just sort of a question. Does that make any more sense? Anybody want to comment on that, tied in with Michaela and what we're talking about here?
Yeah.
Eric, you have your hand up first, and then we have Daniel.
I was muted. I'm sorry.
That's okay.
Can we address the Aquarian question in this, or was that?
Sure, you tie it all together. It seems to me it is tied together.
Yeah. I do not believe that there's any like hard line of now we're in the age of Aquarius. I think of it more as waves. Kind of flowing, and I think our most recent hit was the Jupiter-Saturn conjunction in Aquarius, especially in that very early degree. You know, I think that if swimming in a zodiacal degree or zodiacal age is up to our neck, I think that we're almost into our ankles in this age.
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
You know, and So I think it's fluid, but I think there are definite markers to it, and the most recent being that conjunction that we had in December. So
Yes, yeah, definitely.
Okay, Daniel, let her rip.
Well, I think that as astrologers and actually as human beings, we really need to be observers. I think that the best astrology, in my humble opinion, is observation and correlation. It's not taking keyword salads or looking at charts. It's about seeing what's actually happening in a person's life or in the world around us. Aquarius is the individuation process. It's what drives us forward to become who we are as part of a larger community. But the way that Uranus works is through disruption and interruption and trauma. So take a look around, guys. I mean, what is it that we're experiencing right now? It looks to me like we are moving through quite a traumatic liminal space. So what I take away from that is that we are in the throes of it, whether we're in Aquarius, whether we are in Capricorn, whether we're in we are moving into Aquarius. There's no question about it. And these are the opening stages of it is these crises that we're going through, this trauma that collectively, because Uranus is about the collective, Aquarius is about the collective, where we are having these collective experiences that are teaching us that there's really just one of us on the planet. We can learn this from a colony of ants or a flock of birds. We have to escape from this separateness, which is probably more of a Pisces dynamic. But we have to recognize that we're all in this together. What happens to you happens to me. It may not happen to me today, but it's going to happen to me at some point. So yes, I think that we are in that transition, and we probably have at least one foot in the Aquarian age, if not both.
Yeah, it's as though the accelerator's been hit, isn't it? We've sort of accelerated. It's quite dramatic, of course, as you say, the way we've just suddenly started to go full throttle. And yeah.
Well, it seems sudden, but if you really think 100 years ago, nobody had phones. There was no TV. The radio actually did not quite exist yet. So it's been a hell of 100 years when you look at the last 5,000. So sure. I tend to pin the beginning of the Aquarian age is when we went to the industrial age.
Yeah.
Because it was the first time in all of history that you could have two objects exactly the same. Everything was no longer handmade. And that's a big shift in consciousness. Yeah, we're not okay. Daniel, go ahead. I didn't mean to take it away, yeah. Daniel.
Yeah, no, that's okay. That's good. I think, again, my perspective is I think this started in the 60s, Anthony. I think it started with the Uranus-Pluto conjunction. You think about what happened in the 60s, the anti-war protests, the three assassinations, which to me was the earmark of that decade. And everything has unfolded, accordingly since then. I think that's, if we wanted to mark a beginning, an initiation point, I think it was the Uranus-Pluto conjunction in the 60s.
Or you could even pick on the February 62, when like 6 planets were in Aquarius for like one of the rare times in history, which I think is what the whole "this is the dawning hippie" crap started from. Michael, you want to take it a little further?
I'll try. First of all, evolution is a lot slower than we would like, but there are these, nodal times, these bursts of growth. But because I look at that, we're actually just past the first third of the Piscean age. Okay, so we're moving into the Aquarian age, and these conjunctions that we just talked about, including the latest Jupiter and Saturn one in Aquarius, definitely impulses moving forward. Okay, and I look at centuries, but also this archetype of threeness working in time. And that we were in the first third, okay? And in the first third of the last century, but centuries are man-made, right? So the time thing is kind of a funny thing. But the first third of anything, the way I look at it, is there's a lot of growth. It's like in the intellectual realm in people. And then the second third in the feelings are really being revolutionized. And then finally, in the last third is the actual doing of it. Okay, so to me, I think we still have a ways to go before we get into the actual Aquarian age, though we are moving towards it. And of course, there are impulses, and there are people who are already, way ahead of the game, and those who are way behind in the game, and then there are those who are in the middle and they're fumbling about. But we're on our way.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay.
So we go on to the next question.
Well, we do have Penelope and Amanda would probably like to say a thing or two on this. So Penelope, let her rip, and then we'll go to Amanda.
Okay. So my thought on this, what came to mind, that Jung is very involved in our time right now, and he was Aquarius rising. He had his Uranus in 7. He also had Saturn in Aquarius as well in 1. And I think for me, it links in heavily with, ultimately for me, what astrology is doing is making the unconscious conscious, which is the role of Pluto as well. I think it's a very powerful time. I think that maybe the Jupiter, the grandiosity and the narcissism in society, so not calling people narcissists, but the overall narcissism within each of us, to look at that COVID's given us the time to reflect on how we behave with each other, and that ultimately we're leading to liberation of conditioning ultimately, and that each of us is waking up at our own pace, and we're all going to do it in different ways. So I think it's, whilst it's quite a special time that we're in, and I would say we're in it. That's my view of Aquarius.
Yeah, I definitely think, like Eric said, I don't think it's like, oh, it's Tuesday the 12th, we're in the age of Aquarius. You got a 2000, there's going to be some smearing in the middle of that.
Transition.
Okay, Amanda, then we'll move on to the next question. Amanda, hope we haven't left anybody behind. What do you feel about the age of Aquarius?
Yeah, so I mean, similar to what a lot of you have said, I think it's a process, right? And we're definitely making steps into it. But I got this book, The Astrology of America's Destiny, mostly because I liked the cover, but also because it looked interesting, and I've been using it a lot. And one of the things that he talks about is this changing of the ages. And he essentially says that he sees the last 200 years of an age as a period where, the Pisces signature for us is kind of dying off. And then, long story short, he marks around 2060 as the time where we switch fully into the Aquarian age. And I think that's interesting for a couple reasons. And one of them is that I think we're seeing a lot of the shadow of both the Pisces and the Aquarian age right now, which tends to be the case when we're transitioning. Like you see the shadow of the things. And I also think it's really interesting, just thinking about Pluto going into Aquarius, right? And so it's that kind of like reintroduction to bringing up the shadow Aquarian themes at the collective level. And then moving into Pisces, we'll kind of get that, not last gasp, but in terms of ages, the last gasp of like the rotor-rooting of the Pluto in Pisces before that 2060 time comes in. And we're still seeing the self-sacrifice and the sadomasochistic psychology at the same time as we're seeing Aquarian shadow of, hubris and elitism and all of those things as well. So.
Exactly. Yeah, both, as you say, they're both, Pisces is in the death throes, really, but it's a long process. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We keep trying to kill it and it keeps coming back up again. Anyway,
it won't lie down. That's for sure.
So we technically, since your question smeared into mine, you take the next question, Michaela, if you have something.
Oh, okay. Smear into you? Oh, God, yeah. Okay, so. Right, so as I'll smear into this one, schmear, that's a New York word.
Yeah, it's schmear, like you get a bagel with a schmear. It's just the way, it's a Yiddish term for that in New York. Jewish Yiddish terms are pretty normal,
Okay, so it's connected though. So people are feeling powerless and vulnerable in the light of recent unfolding world events. How would you say that astrology, particularly EA, can help to create a positive perspective under such circumstances? That's quite a big question, but anyone has something to say about it?
Well, my quickie statement is, I can't change the world, but I can change it one person at a time. And so I consider very much, if the more I can empower anybody by having them understand their chart better, and know better how to use the natural skills they have, and know better how to work with the challenges in their chart, then I've fixed one 7/billionth of the world, and we're on our way. And I'm not the only one. I get a dozen of us here, and there's lots more of us, and hopefully most of us are good at what we do. So that's what I see astrologers. It's almost like giving somebody their roadmap to themselves, which they inherently knew. But sometimes, like Dumbo, we need a magic feather, to believe in ourselves. So sometimes astrology can serve as kind of like, well, let's define it in terms of, you have Pluto square your sun. So now you have understanding, you have anger problems, or whatever it might be. I'm just simplifying. So that's how the thing I think is one brick at a time. Astrology helps the world. That's my take on it.
It's all connected,
Okay. We have okay. Michael, you raised your hand about this. Yes.
Yeah. Well, I would just add that it's about personal growth, and that's, of course, we start off with one person at a time, of course, with ourselves. So our own inner growth and our own spiritual growth goes hand in hand with how we work with others, of course.
Mm-hmm.
And so, to the degree that we can, we've worked on ourselves, and we're able to the degree that we can help other people recognize their own, uniqueness and their growth edge. Their shadow is very much involved with that. And it all comes down to responsibility, self-responsibility, and out of the healing that comes out through inner growth, then we're helping to grow compassion in the world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I mean, as Jeffrey Wolf Green said, every crisis, every cataclysmic event is an opportunity for growth in consciousness, as you were saying. And that's what we need to do desperately now, grow in consciousness. There wouldn't be necessary. I mean, it seems to be that it's a cataclysmic event, possibly, or a crisis in individual life. I mean, it's reflected the collective and in the individual. Wouldn't be necessary if our consciousness was high enough. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm always hoping for that era when we don't need a kick in the ass to evolve. We don't need a 3-year pandemic quarantine in order to re-examine our lives. I got my fingers crossed. Optimism is one of my superpowers. Ryan, you have something to add to this?
Yes, sir. Thank you. But that's the nature of humanity, right?
Right now, yeah.
What is what you just said? What is going to encourage us to change? Nothing. We'd rather sit on the couch with the bag of potato chips watching Netflix, chilling in, classic Taurian goodness, because it's all good. Uh-oh, here comes Uranus. Uh-oh, here comes a Saturn and Aquarius square. Oh, you're going to be complacent and you're going to think that everything is just all good while literally 10,000 years of collective trauma is percolating up into our individual and collective lives right now. You want me to just sit back and say, oh, everything's okay? It's not going to happen. We're all feeling so much, and that's the beauty. That's the beauty of Saturn, and that's the beauty of Pluto. That's the beauty of all the outer planets and their shadows, is that it is quite often the darkness, it is quite often the frustration, the blocks, the shadows that if we can choose awareness, that do propel us forward. So that's where we have to give thanks for everything that befalls us. Oh my God, this tragedy, this trauma, this occurs. We always have a choice to spin it in the most positive, healthy way. And I think that's where we are right now. And for most of us, quickly, for most of us who are doing our best to be aware and be conscious, we are that much more aware of the shadows, the blocks, the trauma, and the subsequent need to engage them.
Yeah.
So that's what I think.
Well, that's
Yeah.
the beauty of astrology, isn't it? I mean, it's an amazing gift to be able to see, to get that perspective that isn't, otherwise we wouldn't have. So to give that out and share that is a wonderful, wonderful
Yeah,
thing to be able to do.
life's a series of changes. Absolutely true that, Taurus would like to sit in its ass till it dies, but it's not going to be able to. But remember, for all those transits, Jupiter comes around too, not just Saturn and Pluto and Uranus. So there can be positive. There are times we actually have positive explosions in our life, so it isn't always hardship that forces us to change. So, winning lotto is going to change your life, and it's not necessarily a hardship. Not that we're all going to win lotto. Just want to make sure I've gotten, for this particular question, Daniel, did you speak? Do you need to speak again, or?
Just
We'll be
very
back to you in a
quick.
second, Ryan.
Just very quickly. One of the things that I've observed, I was reading, all right, I'll come back to your comment about the 60s. We had Dane Rudger. It wasn't completely dark. We may have had to read him, 3 or 4 times before we got it, but he was out there, and he was the light, in the woods. But in the 90s, I was an administrator in the New Age Forum on CompuServe. And, again, there was a handful of astrologers. Some of them are still around, Lynn Coiner, and I can't think of all their names, but there were a handful. There was just very few. But in the past 20 years, 30 years, there's this whole new generation of young astrologers. There's this whole resurgence of people who are discovering astrology and making it their careers, their lifestyle, their way of life. And I think that this speaks to the question, because the cosmos is responding by providing more of us. Okay, that's all I have to say.
Yeah, great point.
Ryan, you wanted to follow up with another comment or two just before we got to
have
get to Amanda too. Yeah.
A 7-second comment on not overestimating Jupiter's goodness, if I may. I have my own personal experience.
All right. Okay.
And in my client's experience, I have seen more overestimation. Oh my gosh, I fell off a cliff. Oh, gee, with Jupiter. So I want to just reiterate, all the outer planets are teaching us some hardcore stuff. So I love you.
Jupiter doesn't make it better, it makes it bigger.
That's true. And in America, bigger is always better. Look at our Big Macs. Okay, Amanda, you had something to say about this stuff.
Nothing for me on this one.
Okay. So next question, we got to everybody, right? Okay. Next question's a little bit lighter. So what do you tell people, when you say you're an astrologer, what do you get? The roll of the eyes, the deer in the headlights, the glazed look, oh, how interesting? Or really tell me more, what has the public responded to you when you say you're an astrologer? Real quickly, my favorite things is when I was working in offices and I go, oh, so you're an Aquarius. It's like, yeah, if you believe that astrology crap. And I'm like, well, yes, I do, but that's always fun to mortify somebody. What kind of responses do you get when people learn that you're an astrologer?
Anyone?
Any interesting stories? Any funny? Go ahead, Ryan. You got your hand up. We'll get to everybody. Amanda, Stacy, instead.
Oh, sure. Just real quick, I have to use my empathic intuition to gauge whether or not it is even worth it.
Sure.
Yes, it took me a while to learn that.
I'm a consultant, or I'm an astrologer.
For the IRS, I'm a consultant. I don't want the federal government to look any closer at me. Okay. You know, but no, consultant comes in here. You could put that for anything. Any other amusing? Oh, okay. Sue, you have your hand up.
Well, just briefly, I think that the view of astrologers has changed over the years. I mean, 20, 30 years ago, if I even mentioned astrology, I'd get that look, or you know, you're going to hell, or you know, something like that. And now it seems more either my friends have changed or the world has changed, but it seems like I get more of a positive reaction to it. Oh, you're an astrologer. Oh, well, you know, tell me more, or you know, something like that. So I'm encouraged that people, that it's becoming more mainstream, and that people are becoming more interested. And I mean, just for an example, my two sisters are starting to ask me questions and starting to be interested in what I'm doing as far as astrology, which, you know, a long time ago it was like, oh, you're kind of weird, Sue.
Yeah.
And you're still weird, but they're curious now.
Oh, I'm definitely weird, but they want to be part of the weirdness now.
Yeah, I agree. I'd say over the past 40 years, just 30, 40 years, it has gotten more mainstream, but that's a slow process. Stacy, have your hand up, and then Michael will get to you. Stacy, what do you have to say about, you're an astrologer? Tell me more.
Mine is real brief. So I live in the suburbs of Utah, right?
Mm-hmm.
So most times when people ask, like, what else do you do? And tell me about you. And I say I'm an astrologer. And, you know, you gave an option, Anthony, where it's, oh, that's interesting, tell me more. Except what I get is, oh, that's interesting, and then it stops. People are freaked out. But however, there are people who end up reaching out in spite of it. And it's kind of what I was saying before, how the system doesn't really grasp everyone. And sometimes astrology can kind of catch those people who are falling through the cracks. But that is my most common reaction. It's just like, oh, that's interesting, and that's it.
Yeah, Michael, any comments you have about what people say?
Yeah, I get mainly glazed looks, but I am part of a community where people are accepting of it or involved with it some way. But I guess my anecdote about it was many years ago. I was a single custodial parent, my daughter, and I had a babysitter. And I was coming home from, I had a job at that time, and my friend who I worked with, we come into my house and we're talking astrology as we're walking in. And the babysitter, in that moment, said that she could never babysit for me again because I am of the devil.
Oh.
You know, it was pretty extreme. But anyway, for most of the part, you know, I'm also just very careful of who I say it to. I have a sense, like Ryan was saying, you know, who I should say or should not say it to.
Yeah. Exactly.
Yeah, that's something you learn pretty early on, because at the beginning I'm like, I learned astrology. Look at me, I'm an astrologer. And it's like, okay, shh, you know. Plus, the skeptics just love to tear you to shreds. So, well, we have about 10 minutes left. So, somebody suggested, well, first of all, if anybody has something in particular they want to ask a question of the rest of us, we could do that, or we could just have a simple question of what is your basic philosophy of life, which, yeah, I don't know if that's a simple question. So does anybody have a question they'd like to pose, or shall we just have anybody offer their own philosophies? Unless you have a short, sweet one on your list, Michaela.
What area of astrology have you researched the most? That was one. I don't know if that's interests people, or is that we can be on that?
That's a question. I mean, most of us, I assume, and I'm jumping to conclusion here, tend to be natal chart readers, but you know, Eric made a point of saying he was predictive in natal, but wasn't psychological.
Mhm.
There are particular areas people like to specialize in that want to say something about that area. Okay, we got some hands up. Sue, you want to comment about anything particular?
Sure. My favorite thing is cycles, especially retrograde cycles, eclipse cycles, the Saros cycles, the Metonic cycles. I love looking at progressions along with all of these cycles, because they seem to have an overlay, and each little part kind of pushes the story a little further. And recently I've been also getting into asteroids, name asteroids, and they tend to add extra details to the story as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Some of them are fascinating. You were talking about
Yeah, they are.
I'm particularly fascinated with outer planet cycles, how Saturn goes through the 7-year square, opposition, square, conjunction cycle, and Pluto's stuff too. So I like those I enjoy those kind of cycles. Michael and Stacy. Michael, you want to go first? What in particular enchants you area of astrology?
Yeah, well, right now it's cycles also. I would say how all the different planetary cycles interwork with the lunar nodal cycles, and looking at biography in that way. And I give workshops and retreats on biography work using this.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, that's really useful.
Stacy?
Well, for me, I mean, mine is so simple. I focus on the natal chart. And that is through the filter of Jeffrey Wolf Green, Evolutionary Astrology. I really like focusing on the natal chart because it allows one to really understand their dynamics. And until you really understand your dynamics, then it's kind of useless to go into the other, like progress this and that.
Yeah.
The most important thing is for someone to really understand their soul imprint and, the pattern of where they've been, where they are now, and where they are going is what I have found to be the most useful.
Michael, did you have something you wanted to add? Because your hand was still up. I just wanted to check. Oh, no.
My mistake.
Okay. Well, we got about 10 minutes. I'm going to just throw out a question. Lately, in my particular practice over the last 6 to 8 months, I have found a lot of my clients are coming to me with what I would call unactivated Neptunes. And I find a lot of my clients are coming in looking with consciously or otherwise to access their subconscious and be more intuitive. Now, that's my particular flow of clients. Have any of you noticed in your particular flow of clients over the last year or so a particular pattern? Because I've noticed throughout my career, sometimes I get a bunch of people for months with Mars issues, sometimes, and I'm wondering if lately anything in particular has come out pattern-wise in your list of clients recently. I've been teaching a lot of people how to meditate. I've been telling them to like paint or write or do something creative or not always be so logical. But that's being drawn to me. So, and I think people are drawn specifically to different things. Michael, you got your hand up again, so let her rip.
Yeah, well, my clients as of late have more to do with, I guess, sort of Saturnian, Uranian issues. Finding out like, who am I in this moment? And there are big changes going on. Every client that I've had in the past few months, they're making big moves and changes in their lives. All the plans that they've made have just been thrown out the window, and life has to go on.
Well, we do have that Saturn-Uranus square all throughout the year, so I guess some people are getting it like a pin, and like, what is it, the princess and the mattress and the pea. Penelope, go ahead. What your experiences recently?
Yeah.
Hi there. What I found, I started up a meetup group last year for women on codependency and then looking at the inner child. And I've got up to 600 members now on which is brilliant, on meetup.com. And what I found was that a lot of the females, what they're really looking at is the early trauma of early abuse and the childhood stuff, and then looking at Chiron. And then I've brought in Lilith to it. I think, was it Stacey? Somebody did a beautiful work on Lilith on the EA, I noticed, but that I listened to as well on YouTube. But I think that, you know, it's looking at the shadow and taking responsibility and getting out of the codependency. That's what I'm working or finding that's coming up with me and the Chiron stuff. I enjoy it.
Penelope, Kristen Fontana is the Lilith queen.
Yes, I couldn't recall who it was. Thank you, because the Lilith thing with the 4 Liliths and the asteroid and then the resolution, the true node being the resolution, it's very stunning. It's stunning work.
I do want to mention there's an astrologer named Paul Kelly out of Philadelphia area, roughly, who has been doing some workshops and lectures on Lilith, all the Liliths, because I know there's different interpretations of Lilith. So I just mentioned that if anybody wants to look into Paul Kelly, I watched him do a lecture a couple of months ago, and I don't use Lilith, but it was really well put together. So I just mentioned that. We have about 5 minutes left. I really appreciate everybody playing well together. What is it? Plays well with others. It's good to see we can do that. And Linda, when is the next one of these? It's a bit further on, I believe. I know we're doing 4 this year. She's looking it up while I'm chatting. But if any of you, by the way, if any of you have questions you'd like to kick out there for the next time we do this, send them to me, send them to Linda Johnson, send them to Astrospeak on the Facebook page, and we incorporate what we can. The goal is always, you know, keeping it light and having it roll a bit to prevent the old pontification, or perhaps some people trying to get their entire book into their answer, Ryan. You know, but it's I always enjoy talking to astrologers. Thursday, July 29th at 1 p.m. Pacific time is the next time Astrospeak will be happening. So sharpen your pencils and sharpen your wits, and we'll see you all back here. And that's been 90 minutes of fun to me. If anybody has any last moment things to say, Michaela, thank you.
That's great.
Okay.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Yes.
It's really
okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks, Michaela. Thanks.
Thank
you, Michael. Thanks.
Thanks for Linda. Thank you.
Thank you, Linda, too.
Thanks,
Yes,
everyone.
thank you
That
very
was
much.
fun.
Yes.
Thanks, everybody. Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. Namaste.
Farewell.
Bye-bye. Bye.